Today, we're talking about 4 ways that you can overcome fear and self-doubt as a youth pastor.
Welcome to the Ministry Coach Podcast, where we bring you weekly tips and tactics to help you fast-track the growth and health of your youth ministry. If this is our first time meeting, my name is Jeff Lascola, and this is
Kristen Lascola.
And in this episode, we're going to talk all about how do you overcome fear and self-doubt as a youth pastor.
I think that we've talked about how insecure pastors are before on this podcast. So today we're going to dive back into that topic and give you 4 ways to overcome some of that doubt and that insecurity and that fear that goes along with being a youth pastor, being a leader, being in charge of something that has some weight to it. I think some of us just sign up and say, yeah, I'll do it, but never really feel totally ready and totally equipped. And we second guess ourselves constantly. Guys, I've been in the game a long time and I still second guess myself. So that's probably never going to completely go away. I think it's kind of normal to second guess yourself. But today we're going to go through some things that might help you navigate those thoughts in maybe a healthier way and keep you in the game, because it's one thing to have those thoughts, but it's another thing to let those thoughts dictate what you do. Like, oh, I'm not meant to do this. I'm going to go find another career or another call. You know, you can go to an unhealthy level with them, but everyone, I think most people anyways, are going to struggle with just that low level insecurity, probably for the entirety of their career. So make peace with it, welcome it, acknowledge it. Don't try to completely stiff arm it. Just know, it goes along with the territory of leadership for the most part. So my number 1 way is this: realize early on, if you can, that you are not the main character. You're not the main character in your ministry. And so I think a lot of times we center ourselves as the face of the ministry. And I mean, we could make some arguments of how, that is true. But I think we put a little bit too much emphasis on ourselves and our performance as a youth pastor. And we obsess about our role as the main character, when we all know deep down, of course, we're not the main character. Right. Jesus is the main character. So if you stop obsessing about yourself and what light this ministry is showing you in, and start obsessing about the mission, I think it can take a lot of pressure off. Because when you make yourself the ministry, meaning this is the Kristen show, and I want everyone to know how smart I am and how gifted of a speaker I am and how funny I am and how good I am at connecting with students and how creative with my ideas I am. Well, here's the trouble with that, is that when you're the main character of your ministry, every high you take as a compliment. Everything, it's oh, I knew I could do it. Or, oh, I am so funny. Oh, they love me. Oh, they love me. Because we're living our life in a little bit of a spotlight. And so it can kind of go to your head when things go well. And then the bad side, well, that is a bad side, but the other bad side, there's only 2 sides and they're both bad, is that when things tank, when your numbers are low, when an event doesn't go well, when people don't show up, when no one responds to your altar call, when no one wants to sign up for your leadership team, whatever it is, you take it super personally, and it becomes depressing. And so you're in these one of 2 extremes constantly when you're the main character of your ministry, and that it's all riding on you and your gifts and your talents and your abilities and your personality, your charisma. It's too much for somebody, because your highs will only make you prideful and your lows will only make you depressed. It's where do you end in the ministry begin? It's you're basically putting yourself on a pedestal, saying, do you like it? Do you like me? Did I do it? Did I do a good job? But when we make Jesus the main character and we start obsessing about him instead of ourselves, we become very missionally minded. And then how could we fail if we're trying to make someone else great? If we're trying to make Jesus's name known, if we're trying to make him accessible to students, if we're going to preach the gospel and we start obsessing about that mission, I think what it ends up doing is making us a lot less insecure because we're not the main focus of ourselves anymore. You know, a really unhealthy place of leadership, especially pastoral leadership, is when, you know, you are drawing people to yourself and your personality rather than drawing them to Jesus. Because no matter how good of a youth pastor you are, really kids grow up, you know, and so you're not going to have them forever. Some will come back and be your leaders and serve with you and all that kind of stuff. But, you know, like they're going to go eventually. So point them to the one who will go with them forever. And that's Jesus.
Yeah.
What do you want them to know and remember about your youth ministry? That you pointed them constantly to Jesus, 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 Jesus. So if they don't like Jesus, I mean, maybe they're not ready. Maybe the soil of their heart is not ready to receive it, but we can't take it as, oh, they didn't like me. And if you feel, if you have this constant nagging feeling like people are leaving, not liking you, you might be putting the focal point somewhere where it needs some adjustment. So that's the first way. And along with that, I've mentioned this book many times, and I think that is probably evidence of how impactful it was in my life when I read this book. And it, again, we've mentioned it on a few other episodes, but if you haven't read 200 Pomegranates in an Audience of One, it's the story of a temple craftsman. His name was Hiram, and he was working on the temple for Solomon, and he did his best work 200 feet up in the air, these intricate pomegranates and golden chains and flowers and things where they were not at eye level. Nobody saw them. And the whole point of the book is it's like this act of worship to God. He did his best work where only the eyes of God could see it because he was so confident of who he was working for. It wasn't for Solomon and the applause of man and like, oh my gosh, you're such a great, you know, architect or whatever. But he did it for the Lord. It was like his act of worship was the one that was in private. And so I think over the years, that same narrative keeps always popping back in my head of like, who do I work for? Students are fickle. Like they're going to like it one day and then complain the next. Parents are going to love you one minute. And then the second you discipline their kid, they're going to talk bad about you. And then, you know, your senior pastor might, you know, your relationship could be up and down with that. Like, you know, it's like, it has to be, we have to be clear on who our audience is over and over and over and over again. And it is Jesus. We're working for him. We're missionally minded. We're not the main character. So we can let ourselves off the hook. Hey, it's this guy. Point to him, point to him, point to him. Eyes off you, on to Jesus. So number 2, find your people. So I think one of the best ways I found to overcome my fear and self-doubt as a youth pastor is definitely to find my people. So to figure out who I need on my team that, like, it sounds so silly, but that like you. Like there's such a difference in coming to work and coming to youth group and serving alongside people who actually like you, are loyal to you, are encouraging to you. Because seriously, I could tell you a million stories of moments where my heart was on the floor, crushed into a million pieces. And all it took was one of my people, one of my leaders, like put their arm around me like, hey, you're doing such a good job. That was totally out of your control. You did the best you could. Like, you know, what do you need? We're here for you. Like I feel like I am the youth pastor I am today. Like my confidence is because I have a team behind me that is like they're my biggest fans.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't want to say it like that because it sounds so conceited, like you're my fan, but they really are. And it
goes
mutual.
both ways.
I was just going to say that it's mutual. I'm their biggest fan and I would do anything for them. And
Your
so
ride or dies. I don't know what that means, but everybody says it in that term.
I know.
Like we're either going to ride somewhere
we're going to do this
or we're going to
do or die. Like, I don't know. I just always think of that Lady Gaga song. I'm your biggest fan. I'll follow you.
Oh,
Anyways, paparazzi. I love that song. But I think, yeah, it goes both ways. Like, it's so mutual. Like, I show them I'm your biggest fan. I love you. I'll do whatever it takes to help you succeed. I'm going to serve you. I'm going to be there for you in your time of need. And then it's crazy how that just comes back around naturally. You know, I had this guy on my staff once. He wasn't like close staff. He was just like distant staff, like kind of security and
second cousin staff. Once
removed. But he was upset with me about something, you know, pertaining to a game that he didn't like. And he took his kids out of our youth ministry, but he wanted to keep serving on security.
That's weird.
I know. And I was like, kind of like, okay. And then our senior campus pastor at the time, my direct report was sort of like, no. And I'm like, well, it's fine. He goes, no, he's not your fan. You don't want him there. He like, obviously this
doesn't support it. So
yeah, he's like, this hasn't been fully resolved. His kids aren't back. Like, so no, I want you to have people on your team that are your fans, not that, you know, kind of have one foot in, one foot out or whatever it might be. And I let him make the call on that. But looking back on it, I thought that's a really interesting concept to say, now it sounds like just you want yes men around you, but not necessarily. It's just a team has got to be solid. And it's amazing what it does for the youth pastor to have a team around them that's just going to rally, that's going to encourage, that is going to defend you to other people if something goes down of like, hey, well, she did things by the book, or no, you weren't there. And everything was kosher and there's nothing to hide. Like, you want people who are going to constantly be speaking well of you, not a team full of contention, because that is going to strip you of your confidence so fast, having to get in front of a group of people that don't really like you.
Right.
Now, if it's something you've done wrong and you need to kind of fix and mend relationships, you know, sometimes people don't like us for a reason. We have to confront that honestly. But, you know, I just think finding your people will make such a difference, because sometimes, like, I don't care what happened with the students that night. I had so much fun with the leaders and we're hanging out till 11 a.m. or 11 p.m. Feels like 11 a.m. that we've been there all day, you know, and music on, fun, eating snacks, rehashing the night, and we just enjoy being together. So it's like we could have the most discouraging night. Students misbehaved. Students were having drama. I got a phone call from a parent, you know, the police show up, or, you know, something dramatic happens. But then at the end of the night, I'm with like my buddies and I'm like, it's all going to be okay.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, if you're that leader and you're going on the right path, you're steering the ship, everyone's rowing in the same direction, good things are going to happen. Obviously, you have to be steering them in the right direction, though. That's key. That's number one. But then having everyone buy into what the vision you have is. And we've done an episode on how to cast, you know, vision for your ministry and things like that. But if you have people that are rowing the opposite direction or putting an oar in the water to, you know, steer you the wrong way, a divisive team is never going to succeed. Like, it just does not work that way. And so again, it's not saying you have to have all yes men, but you have to have people all bought into the same idea. Like, let's all go in the same direction together.
Yeah.
And that's huge. That's where the health of your team is gonna grow, and that's where your ministry overall, everything is just gonna benefit from that.
Yeah, and I think it comes down to them trusting you also. Of like, I've had leaders definitely, they don't just follow me blindly. They'll like give me their suggestions, like, hey, you know, at the end of the day, I trust you. You're gonna make the call, but wouldn't it be easier if we just did A, B, and C? Mm-hmm. And, you know, I'll always consider it. Well, yeah, you know, I'm so glad you brought it up. That actually is not going to work because you didn't know about D, E, and F over here. Right. But keep the ideas coming, because it takes all of our heads to solve these problems. And then sometimes they will say, well, no, because this, and this work. I'm like, yeah,
think about
you're
that.
right. And so there has to be room for discussion and disagreement and input and all of that. It's not like we're saying like, where's your little army of like robots? But it is so nice when at the end of the day, there is just trust of like, hey, I will listen to you, but you know, we're going to keep going this way. And for them to have enough chips in that bank to say, yeah, sounds good, and not be upset about it. You know, it gets really dicey when you have people on your team that are fending not fending, like vying, that's the word, for your position. And I think that's happened a couple of times where you have that volunteer who they think they should be the youth pastor and they have some ideas and think you're dumb and think, like I would do it this way and I know better than you and blah, blah,
and they're toxic. And especially if those people start getting in the ear of other volunteers or people at the ministry, we're like, I don't know why we're doing this. We shouldn't be doing it this way. It's better to do it this way. It's like those people are just toxic to have around.
And then going back to our topic, that really puts some self-doubt in you as a youth pastor. A full circle to why we started this topic in the first place of it is so important that you have the right people on your team for your health too, as a youth pastor, not just for your students, not just for that, but for you to have a team that constantly lifts you up and supports you through those really horrible messages. And you get off stage and you feel like such a loser and they're like, hey, it wasn't your best, but you know what? It's okay because, 1 in 10, you're going to have some misses. Like you've got to know that, like just people that can pick you up and speak some sense into you that genuinely love and like you. That is a game changer. All right. So number 3, I think one way that you can really overcome self-doubt, and this one might be a little counterintuitive, is to constantly ask for feedback and help and advice and just be an open book for that kind of stuff. Because I think when we have self-doubt, we're very sensitive to judgment, but the judgment of others is often a lot gentler when we aren't coming in like we know everything. When we constantly are asking for feedback or help or advice, people see us as a person who is teachable and humble and
trying to improve,
on our level, human. And I think people will not judge you as harshly and the expectations will not be as intense because I think it's just human nature. When someone comes in like they know it all, you like have them under a microscope. You're like, let's see you fail, and you almost are rooting for them to fail because they're pompous and they have this edge and this air of like, I've got it. I don't need anyone's help. I'm a one-man show and nobody, but when you kind of come in like, what do you guys think? Like the pastor I work for right now is 100% that. I feel like he always knows the answer, but he still will ask like, oh, like, what would you do in this situation? Or what do you think? And it all of a sudden, like, just makes you look at them in such a different light of so approachable and so like, oh, like, you're just one of us, even if you are some genius and you're hiding it. But, instead of...
I'm a genius. I've been hiding it for many years.
I don't believe you.
Fooled you guys.
That is the true genius, that you can fool us into not thinking you're a genius. How did you do it? But you know what I mean? Like, I think it just brings this persona to the table that's very... like relatable and people treat you gentler in their assessment of you because our self-doubt starts to creep in sometimes because of people's judgment and expectations of us. But if we can remain on that humble level that like, hey, you and I were right here. I can take feedback. I can take suggestions. I need help. I want to continue to learn and grow. What do you have for me? What would you do? Well, what's your suggestion? And kind of sharing that leadership in a way, it's again, sort of counterintuitive, but the more you just hold on to that title over time, what that does is it just creates this like little impenetrable, what do you call it? Force field around you that nobody can get to. And then people will just automatically judge you harsher. If you want gentler judgment and if you want people to be kinder in their assessment of you, then keep it humble, keep asking, keep questioning, keep including people in decision making, stay as humble and inclusive in your leadership as possible. And people will definitely you'll just be so much more favorably viewed in their mind.
Yeah.
They're not going to be looking and waiting for you to make a mistake. They're going to encourage and cheer you on.
Yeah, there's a couple things I think to watch out for with that is number one, when you're inviting feedback, then your skin better thicken up really quick because you're going to get it. And it may not be as harsh, but you may not have gotten it at all otherwise. And now it is coming. And you're going to have those people that are probably going to be like, well, I've got a novel worth of, information that I'm going to pour at you, because they're just those type of people that have a problem with everything, that are always looking for everything that's wrong, yada, yada. We all know those people. The problem sometimes that can happen with them is, okay, you get their feedback. If you don't then take some of their suggestions, because their ideas might be horrible. Their suggestions might be completely stupid.
Yeah.
And if you don't take them at all, it might cause a little bit of a further, increase the tension maybe between you.
I think
so. It's a fine line I think you have to walk, and especially if you know those are the type of people, or that one person is going to be like that. And so I don't know if I would necessarily know how to navigate that. I'm sure you would a lot better because you're so smart. But
and I'm not even hiding it.
This is full on display genius, not covert genius like me. No, but I think that's the thing that I would, in an episode about fear and self-doubt, that's what I would be afraid of.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think that is definitely a risk, but I feel like it's always in kind of how you frame it. Like, you can include people, not just like saying, tell me everything that's wrong with this ministry, but if you pick something specific and say,
how do you think I'm doing?
How do you think that game could have gone better? Like, to me, just something was disjointed. Like, what would you have done differently? Like, what could we write in for next time? That's very low risk. You're not saying like, tell me the top 3 things I do that are annoying. It's like,
seriously, can I write now?
You do every single day. So
it's not true. You wouldn't believe all that I hold back.
I don't want to know. But like asking something specific, like how would it like?
So maybe those people you go for the lower risk.
Yeah,
feedback.
But it like what did that, was that video actually funny, or was it just me? Like, were people laughing? I couldn't tell.
Yeah.
So it's just these little subtleties of like including people in this process. And the reason I brought this up is because I will never forget, one year I was at Forest Home. It's a camp kind of close to us. And the main camp director of the middle school they had planned this big obstacle course for everybody, and we had just gone through it, and him and his staff were kind of doing a little huddle, and I was grabbing my stuff, getting ready to go to lunch or something. And he said, "Hey, Kristen, can we like grab you for a second? Hey, what did you think of that obstacle course? Like, just as someone who was navigating it with their students, do you think it was easy? Do you think it was too hard? Do you think it was fun? What parts went well?" And I was like, I can't believe Nate, remember Nate? I'm like, I can't believe Nate's asking for my feedback. And he won a fan that day. I don't know if he really cared what I had to say or not. I think I said something like, oh, the slip and slide wasn't slippery enough, something very profound.
And you went down a couple notches in his mind.
Loser.
No, that makes sense though, because you're elevating somebody else, and that everybody likes to be.
He included
elevated.
Me in this conversation of kind of this peek behind the curtain. I was like, oh, I better have something to say. And the slip and slide needed more soap. It really did. It wasn't very slippery. I just pictured people like falling, but everyone could just climb. It was supposed to be you climbed up a hill. That was a slip and slide. It was too easy. And we went to camp for a few more seasons after that. And I just remember that was the moment where I'm like, I'm your fan.
Yeah.
So I always try to think of that, of like including people in this process that inadvertently sort of does a number on your self-doubt, because they all kind of lift you up. And then finally, keep on learning. So the more skills that you have, the more confident you'll become. And the biggest thing I've learned this year in regards to that, because that's nothing new, that's not like a profound statement, but we'll hone that in a little bit so that you can kind of understand where my head's at for this year, is saying yes to things that stretch you. So I think there's like a confidence. Like this year, I did this huge project that was not necessarily for my ministry. It was for the church, where we like shut down church for the weekend. And we, instead of attending church, did service projects out in the community. Well, they asked me to be a project manager of one of the projects, and it just happened to be the biggest one. I didn't know that when I said yes. And if you would have told me, if they had explained to me what exactly I would have been doing, I would have said no way. But I'm glad I didn't know, because I was already committed, and it stretched me to, lead on a whole new level that I've never had to lead before, tap into resources and skills that I never knew I had or could manage. And we pulled it off, and it was completely successful. And for me, at the end of all that, we did that in April, just to like sit back and go, whoa, my leadership grew so much. My confidence grew so much, and my self-doubt was squashed by that, because I realized when I say yes to the things that stretch me, and I have to just like rally and make this thing happen and pull together every single resource I have and just go for it. At the end of those things, you're like, oh my gosh, I can do hard things. I can do difficult things. Because sometimes as youth pastors, maybe you haven't hit this point yet if you're newer, but we can get in a little bit of a routine. Like sometimes when I make my yearly calendar, I'm like, so I'm doing the same stuff all over again. And it's old for me. It's new for students.
Yeah.
So I try not to be like jaded, like, oh, well, this is so old. Because I'm like, these are my tried and true. They love them. If it's not broken, don't fix it. And just because I'm in a rut of like, oh, we do the Glover Nighter every January, we do winter camp every February, we do Starving to Serve every March, And for me, it's just like this, but they're like, oh my gosh, this is so cool, because it's their first time or second time, whatever.
Or they had an older brother or sister who went through it, and they're excited it's their turn now.
Yes. And so like when we try to find things that stretch they can be hard to find if you're in this like hamster wheel of we do the same thing all the time, but trying to find areas where you can stretch yourself, step out, and something that is really challenging to your teaching. Maybe you've never taught at a camp and you want to try to start off with a winter camp. They're shorter and just do a few. Speak at a retreat, speak at a different age group that you're not used to, speak at a different demographic that you're not used to. Go to a school and teach at their Christian club. I don't know, just something that makes you squirm a little bit and really have to rely on the Lord and really have to work hard and really have to, just be stretched for that time. I think that is another thing that builds self-confidence, because you'd be amazed at what you can do. And when you rely on God and the people that he brings to the table to help you when you have that willing heart, it's really amazing. And so I feel like I gain confidence every year because I've had to try and do something new. And so now those things, they're just not scary anymore. Like the first time I had to like MC the main service, it was like, oh my gosh. But now I'm like, for sure, I'll do it. Like, I'm not even nervous at all. I'm very self-confident in that area. Or will you teach communion for the adults? We're doing communion on Saturday night. Like, yeah, I'll do that. Like, and the things that where I used to be sweating and like, oh my gosh, like thinking about for weeks and weeks and weeks before they happen, now are no big deal. And I love that, because that just means I have one more tool in my pocket of that confidence of, I can do more than I thought I could, because I said yes. And I tried in an area that I was actually really afraid to do. So,
yeah. And I think fear, it's normal. There's always gonna be that part of us that's either gonna have the fear or have the self-doubt. I heard a quote one time, I think it was, I don't know if you know who Modern Millie is. I think it's attributed to her, but she was talking about how she would deal a lot of times with anxiety specifically. And she got to a point where it was like, she didn't want it to become crippling. And I know a lot of us have probably struggled with anxiety in one point in our life, whether, it's something in our life that causes anxiety. And she just finally started to say to herself, kind of like, I'm going to do this. So anxiety, fear, you're just going to have to come with me. And this is what I'm doing.
Yeah.
So instead of constantly fighting it and trying to be, distance yourself from it, it's like, this is what, for youth pastors, it's like, this is what God and I are going to be doing. Fear, anxiety, you're either going to have to go away or come with us because this is the direction we're going.
Yeah. That's funny you bring that up because it is, I wonder if my friend got it from her.
That might not even be the right attribution.
Well, we were on an airplane, long flight, so we had a lot to talk about, and she said that she was working through some anxiety stuff, and the quote that for her was like, I knew you'd show up. Like, as soon as your anxiety comes, like, I knew you'd come.
Yeah.
I knew you'd be here. I knew you'd show up. Like, just that almost expectant, like, yep, part of the deal, part of the, whatever. And just like, yeah, like, instead of trying to tell it like, go away, don't be a part of the process, it's like, how can I continue to put one foot in front of the other, even wearing this heavy coat of anxiety or whatever it is? It's like, well, we're just going to keep going. And, obviously that's not going to be forever. You're going to reach an end to this project or this message or this thing that you're doing. And there'll be that letdown of like, whew, we did it, but yeah, like it just might be a part of the landscape of the project for a while. And I guess we just have to be okay with it.
Right.
It's not going to kill us.
Yeah. And if you want to go a little bit further, episode we did a while back, it was titled How to Find Motivation During Frustration or During Frustrating Times. You might want to check that out. We will link it in the show notes below. Right now, we're going to do a question of the day and then a comment of the day. And then we're going to announce this week's winner for our giveaway. This is week 4 of our giveaway. So that means this week and then next week is the last one. So make sure you guys get your entries in. If you want to know how to enter the contest, go ahead and check out the description below. It'll tell you all the details. So the question of the day is, this is really going to split culture in two. When you wear a hat, should you wear it ears out or ears tucked in?
I am a tucked ear person, but I think it depends on your head size, head shape, face, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. On me, I look so dumb. I look like Dopey if I leave my ears out of the hat, like they stick out like this, like.
Could be the hat too.
And I've seen people that do. I'm like, no, your ears are coming out like Dumbo or Dopey. You need to tuck those suckers in.
I have elfie ears.
But when you tuck yours in,
but if I tuck them in here,
for those
of you who are listening on just the podcast, you're gonna need to go over to YouTube and see, because I feel like I look like a seal. Like, where did my ears go?
I think you look like a potato.
Or a potato. I feel like I should be swimming in the Olympics right now with my head swim cap on.
Yeah,
I'm not an ears tucked in
Maybe
person.
Someone who's listening knows why some people can tuck their ears into their hat and some people can't.
Yeah, maybe it's just a head shape, ear shape kind of thing, but we want to know your response for that. What is your preference? Ears out or ears tucked in? I mean, hey, you do you, but when I see someone with ears tucked in, I feel like it was like, maybe I shouldn't say it, but I just think it looks like somebody, like a kid who is wearing daddy's hat. I feel like girls can wear their ears tucked in.
Yeah, maybe it's like
I think
I'm
thinking more
thing.
about guys.
Maybe girls are supposed to tuck their ears in and boys are supposed
maybe
to
this
leave their
question
ears
really
off.
should be, should guys tuck their ears in or not? Because those are the ones that I notice that makes me think, I don't think you bought the right hat size, maybe. And it's just too big and daddy's hat's fitting a little big. No, hey, do what you do. Maybe the ears in people think I'm stupid, and probably rightfully so. Okay, let's do a community comment of the day. This comes from Mr. Kyle Beard, who says, great practical advice. Love this podcast. Super helpful and practical guidance on many ministry areas. Also, the sound quality is really good.
Oh.
Thank you for noticing, Kyle. We appreciate
Jeff worked hard on getting the right mics and all that. I think he lists them in the description.
Yeah, they're like $50 mics. You should check them out.
Hey, that's
maybe a little
bougie.
more, but yeah, whatever.
50.
That's all we can afford right now.
$50.
No, but thank you, Kyle. We do appreciate that. And beyond just the sound quality, the practical tips, we strive to do that every week. This is the announcement for the giveaway winner is what I'm trying to think of right now.
Get ready because this is
right now.
It's going to happen.
In 3, 2,
Two,
1. The winner for this week's dodgeball set giveaway is Josh Berry.
Josh Berry, we knew you could do it.
Congratulations, Josh. We will be sending you an email about how we can send the dodgeballs to you as soon as possible.
Here they come.
But thank you so much for entering our giveaway, and congratulations on
Where's Josh
winning.
Berry from?
Oh, good question. I think he is from Missouri.
Missouri.
Ozarks.
Ozarks.
Is it Ozark or Ozarks?
The Ozarks.
Okay, but the show is Ozark.
Yeah.
Okay.
What is the Ozark?
The mountain range? The water? Josh, if you could respond.
We could Google it, but we'd rather have a response from you, Josh Berry, from the Ozarks.
From the local. Well, thank you so much. Hey, and we appreciate you guys, all of you watching and listening, and we will see you next time.
Today, we're talking about 4 ways that you can overcome fear and self-doubt. Today, we're talking all about
Today, we're talking all about the moles in the ground.
One of the trickiest parts of camps to